Hello everyone, I'm here with a pair of Ruark Talisman speakers. These are the original Talismans. There was a Talisman 2 and a 3 I believe. So these are from the, I think, early 80s. A chap called Adam has dropped them into me to give them an initial once over, measure them up and see how they're sounding. As I'll show you shortly, they do have a lot of cosmetic damage. Which I don't think he's too worried about, really. It's just getting them sounding right. But I've done the measurements, which I'll go through shortly, and yeah, they're not particularly good, unfortunately. We've got a lot of damage to these. This woofer here has been damaged. This one here has got some creases in it as well. These are a treated paper cone, 5.5 inch. Yeah, this tweeter here has been knocked in. So the mesh has been knocked in, which can be brought back out again, but we've also pushed in the metal dome of the tweeter itself, which isn't particularly good. So they're floor standing speaker. I haven't measured the height of them, but I'd say probably about 70 centimeters. Ported two-way design. From the measurements, which we'll have a look at shortly, it looks like the tweeter's playing fairly low, which is a good thing. And when I do the off-axis measurements vertically and horizontally, they're they stay in phase quite a lot. There's not really much suck out or anything like that, so I reckon this is being allowed to play fairly low. It's a 25mm tweeter, so it can probably reach lower than most. But yeah, like I say, a two-way design. Haven't looked at the crossover. I'm not going to yet. I think there's issues with it because I can see a lot of distortion in the measurements. A lot of that does come from the crossover components. When I'm running test tones as well, these drivers, they're pretty noisy. I can hear a lot of coloration in the sound, a lot of distortion. But yeah, interesting floor standing speaker. Personally, I've never understood the thought behind, if you're going to have a floor standing speaker, having such a small floor standing speaker. Obviously the bigger cabinet allows more bass from the smaller driver, but yeah, they're a compact floor stander. So yeah, let's have a look at the measurements and then I'll show you around them, and yeah, I can get the information back to Adam and we can go from there. Okay, so as you can see, I still haven't figured out a means of capturing my screen properly, but so what, I'll put pictures of these measurements up at the end and tell you what they are. Okay, so the first speaker I measured is the one with the dented tweeter, and as you can see, around this area here we've got a big peak and a big dip, and when the signal sweep runs you can really hear this, and that's not good, and I'm pretty sure that's down to that damaged tweeter. Otherwise, you know, we've got this dip and a rise. Crossover point must be around here somewhere. Like I say, I'm sure the tweeter's playing low in these, because when I run using the generator, this thing here, I just go through third octave steps and just listen, and you can hear, if you put your hand over the tweeter, where it's kind of outputting, where it's not, and it seems to play pretty low, which is quite interesting, and that is actually helping these speakers, which we'll talk about shortly. So that's the one with the damaged tweeter on axis. This is the one that seems to be okay, but there is something not right with a pair of them in the kind of mid region. I'm hearing a lot of distortion when the test sweep is running, and our output is quite dipped, but we've got a lovely flat line here, which leads me to again believe the tweeter's being played fairly low. If we look at the distortion for this this speaker down the bottom here, we do have a bit of distortion. If we look at the one with the damaged tweeter, here we have a big amount of distortion creeping in here, and you know, you can, like I say, hear that as well, but there's an unusual amount of distortion in both of them. So this one, I think the tweeter is good, but on both of them I'm questioning the woofers. They're doing similar things. This may be crossover issues. So yeah, I think if we go further with these speakers, we'll dig into the crossover next time. Okay, so if we go back to our measurements here, so what I would do is turn off a few of these. So if we look at horizontal, so the orange line, which is that one highlighted, is our on-axis response of our good tweeter, or the one with good speaker, the one without the damaged tweeter. If we go 15 degrees horizontal, we don't really change a huge amount, possibly improve if anything. And 30 degrees, again, not a huge difference. So they behave very well horizontally. And remember, these measurements are being done at 1 meter. Our tweeter does roll off the more horizontal we go, as we can see here. So on axis 15 and 30 degrees, but where the crossover point is, which is where we would have a change, it's not great. So pretty good. So if we look at the vertical measurements, I've only gone above the tweeter, so 10 degrees and 20. Again, we kind of improve going above the tweeter, which would make sense because these speakers are leant back. The front baffle is at an angle, so they're quite short as well. So I think naturally listening to them, you would be under, or sorry, above tweeter axis. So it kind of makes sense, really. So again, our orange line, the one I've highlighted here, is on axis. And then if we go 10 degrees above, probably flatten out a bit more actually, but we do develop a bit of a lump here, and that stays with us when we go 20 degrees up as well. It's not in a great place around the 800 Hz region. I think that's going to draw a bit of attention to itself, and it's significantly higher than, if you look at the line here, we're sitting at about 86 dB, and then we jump up a good 5 dB here, so that's going to stick out. And I think that's some of the distortion, some of the resonances we're hearing in the woofer. So yeah, we need to dig into that a little bit deeper, really. Then if we look at the spectral decay, reasonably clean. The tweeter's good, bit of ring in here, but these are the things you can hear, the distortion. So we're ringing out a little bit, which isn't particularly great. And if we look at the one with the damaged tweeter, yeah, there's a lot of ringing going on around this area here. Yeah, so neither of them are particularly great. I don't know much about the speaker, whether they were good. I haven't physically listened to them, just shot the measurements at the moment, but like I say, when I'm running test tones through them, I can hear distortion, which is never good. So if we look at phase relationship, our crossover point must be, I don't know, between 1 and 2K. I think it's, like I say, the tweeter's pretty low. Given that we've got all this going on, I wonder whether the woofer is playing full range. I don't know. And then we've got a little bit of probably baffle step here that's causing this. But yeah, quite an interesting speaker. So they both need work. Pretty sure the crossovers want rebuilding. We need to try and repair the tweeter, which I think will be doable as long as the mesh has only just been pushed in, and the metal dome on the tweeter we can probably pull back out. One of the woofers has some creasing in it. It doesn't seem to be affecting the cone in distorting it, causing any cone rub or anything. But yeah, like I say, if we go further with these, we'll do another video taking them apart and having a look inside. But yeah, just thought I would give you a look at these while they're here. Okay, so let's have a look at the front of them. So we've got reasonably small woofer, 5¼ inch, I think. Yeah, 140 centimeters. Sorry, 140 millimeters. So 5¼ which is, you know, for a floor standing speaker, albeit quite a compact one, is a small driver. So yeah, these are treated paper, and we've got some creases here. The dust cap is doped, so a rubber suspension. This tweeter here, the mesh at the front has been pushed in, and it's actually pushed against the metal dome of the tweeter and pushed that in slightly as well. It looks like they have a piece of circular plastic behind the mesh, which is very similar to the CAS 418, I think it is, that Rogers used, that sort of thing. I haven't taken these out yet, so I don't know who makes the drivers. So ported enclosure. From the near field measurements I took and the way the phase angle changes, it looks like the port's tuned to around 50 Hertz, which would make sense. So they, you know, play reasonably low. But yeah, so 5½ inch woofer, probably something like a 25mm metal dome tweeter. Yep. Again, I haven't taken them apart. I haven't measured the drivers independently, but covering up the tweeter and looking at the measurements, I would say the tweeter is playing down pretty low, which is fairly interesting. On this woofer as well, we've got some damage, and there's a lot of distortion in the measurements. And when I run a signal sweep for the measurements, I can hear that, and I also run test tones as well, and around 1.5 kilohertz there's a lot of distortion. I can hear it, it just doesn't sound right. And to me, these feel unusually stiff. They might just be the way the drivers are, but yeah, cosmetically they're in pretty poor condition really. We've got a lot of veneer missing from the bottom here. This is MDF, this front panel, with a wood veneer on it. And then we've got this moulding round it, which is kind of butt jointed. It's not cut 45 degrees. It's strange. I'll bring you in closer to have a look in a minute. But yeah, they're in pretty poor condition, really. So we do this a bit handheld. This is what I mean about the corner joints. They're just butted, sanded into shape. So I'd imagine this is probably solid wood. Like I say, the front looks like it's MDF, because I can see the MDF here when the veneer has come off there as well. So they've got a lot of knocks. It would probably sand up okay though, and it could be re-oiled. The cabinets themselves, or the back parts of them, which are just painted black, I mean, again, it's MDF and it's chipped and blown a lot. So yeah, not in great condition really. So if we have a look at the back of this one, you can see it's quite marked up. You've got some flex used as a jumper there across the binding posts, so you can buy wire these. And the bottom is pretty scuffed up and damaged as well. All repairable. We've got spikes on the feet there, but yeah, it just depends what Adam wants to do with these really, because they're not sounding particularly good. So on the bottom we have a substantial metal plate, probably about 5-6 mil thick, which our feet, or our spikes, are threaded into, and we have a lock-in nut. Again, as you can see, the MDF here is really blown. So yeah, that gives it a substantial amount of weight at the bottom, which is a good thing really with a a sort of floor standing speaker, make them bottom heavy. But yeah, there you go. Interestingly, those speakers have been sat there for nearly a week, and there's something there the cat is not too keen on. Yeah, I think they're a bit musty. Maybe they've been stored in a damp garage or something. But what is it, Pusscat? Huh? Anyway, guys, I will catch up with you soon.